Let me guess. You are a woman over 40 and you want to write your first children's book? Am I a mind reader? Absolutely not. But I am obsessed with helping women like you launch their first children's book in 90 days. Yes, you heard me right. In 90 days. No tech experience? No worries. Feeling too old? We'll talk about that. Worried your story isn't good enough? We'll talk about this one too. Inside my membership, you get personalized coaching for 90 days plus support inside a private community of women just like you. We do this in 4 easy steps. First, you become the project manager of your own book. Second, you learn how to manage your creative team, your editors, your illustrators, and your designers. Third, I walk you through self-publishing click by click without overwhelm. And finally, we talk about marketing and book launching so your book doesn't stay hidden forever. This is risk-free, supportive, and designed to help you turn your story into a legacy. So, if becoming a published author of your own children's book has been on your heart for years, please don't ignore this again. Click on the link below this video because your book is waiting for you. Let's get to work. Welcome to the Minute Mastery Podcast, a conversational productivity and time management podcast where busy authors and entrepreneurs are inspired to create time for what truly matters. I'm your host, Ngozi Edema. I'm a time management coach, writer, and entrepreneur. Here, you are encouraged to turn your minutes into milestones and to create at least 1 hour a day working on your goals without feeling overwhelmed. My guest today is Shanti Hershenson Singh. Her first 2 novellas were published when she was in the 6th grade, although her writing journey started long before then. Ever since she could hold a pencil, a marker, or a crayon, she was creating stories. They started from pictures, from scribbles, and eventually turned into captivating stories. Thank you for coming to the show, Shanti, and we are looking forward to hearing from you because this is inspirational that you started so early writing. So, what helped you to believe that your voice matters, that you should write something that the rest of us can read?
Good question. Ever since I was really, really little, was just obsessed with this idea of writing a book, of creating a story, of like turning one of the crazy ideas in my head into something that's like real, and then therefore something that's like a physical, like printed project. So, really, I don't think there was a particular moment where I realized that my voice mattered because I was constantly sharing stories when I was a kid, whether or not people wanted to hear them. I was the kind of child who, during class, rather than doing what we were supposed to be doing, was like scribbling on a piece of paper and then binding them together into like a little like pretend book. And what ended up happening though is as I grew older, I would say I was about 12 years old, and I happened to have a friend who was also into writing, and for fun, we just started writing a book, and that became like my very, very, very first project. It was this like 50-page novella. That said, it absolutely laid the groundwork for everything I have now. So then a couple months later, it was the pandemic, and I was stuck at home. I was bored. I mean, no one wants to be in 6th grade and be also in a completely new city because I just moved a couple months before and have nothing to do. So I ended up writing a book just really as an outlet for myself rather than anything else. But the more that I really fell in love with the story, the more I was like, I need to do something with this. And I wanted to use this project to fulfill this like lifelong dream I had of being an author.
Wow, that is inspiring. So, during COVID, your family moved to a new city, and so you have the pandemic to deal with and moving to a new city because I know I have 4 children and we moved when they were about that age too. And I know moving for young people can be very stressful. You need to make new friends. You need to learn about the new city and the new way of life. So, did you use writing as your outlet for getting out of the problem that was created by the move?
Definitely. I think overall, like from what I remember, I I don't think I minded the move as much as I minded the pandemic because early on, like, in a way, it's like being in this new city is kind of exciting, but then that excitement wears off when all of a sudden you have to be just at home and you can't
Hmm,
do anything else.
yeah. I don't think any one of
And
us
I
loved the
definitely used writing.
pandemic. I'm
Yeah.
yet to meet one person who said, "Oh, you know what? I was so excited during the pandemic. It was depressing to be shut out from the rest of the world." So I'm happy that you found something to do because sometimes young people get bored and they're
Yeah.
like, "I don't know what to do. What do I do?" So you use writing as a way to relieve yourself of that stress. So what would
Yeah.
you say to a young writer who feels shy, unsure about sharing their own story?
Ooh, I mean, I always think that like sharing my work is the hardest part, but you don't have to instantly share it with like a ton of people. You don't have to do what I remember is that I didn't tell anyone I was writing a book until we had like the first family gathering where we had like my aunt and uncle over in like several months. And then I was like, guess what, guys? I'm writing a book. Can I read you guys the prologue? But you don't have to do that. What you can do, even just if you feel like you want to share your writing but you're nervous, share it with someone you really trust. Maybe even just send a couple lines of something you're working on to a friend. Maybe you just share a little bit of a scene. Maybe just tell them the idea. But once you get more comfortable with the idea of other people reading your work, then you can start sharing it maybe with like an entire group of people or your family. And then eventually all that leads to the idea of like sharing it with literally anybody.
Thank you. Writing a book requires a lot of discipline. You need to sit down, take time to write the book. Is there one habit that made the difference for you while you were writing?
Oh, 100%. So, my biggest tip, I share it whenever I'm asked. I've said it so many times now that it's just like memorized, is that I write 1,000 words a day. And I have written 1,000 words a day ever since I was seventh grade. I have, and I'm not saying you should do this, but I have written my 1,000 words even when I had a concussion, when I was like extremely sick, when I've written my 1,000 words when I've had no Wi-Fi. And right now, it's just like it's such a habit that I can't imagine not doing it. But this is genuinely how I'm able to finish my book so quickly and how I'm able to just keep going is that I do my 1,000 words. That can knock out a first draft in anywhere from 2 to 6 months, depending on the length of the draft. And then I'm also always writing a book and editing a different book at the same time. Sometimes it's multiple projects. I had a point where I had one book that I was drafting, another book I was rewriting the intro for, another book I was in like the final rounds of editing, and another book I was just like beginning that editing process. But that is a more personal, just like thing about my process. But the main thing is just like writing 1,000 words every day is, or just any amount. Like I recommend the same amount because you can really train your brain to get into that habit. But yeah, if you can just keep up that consistent thing day by day, it's so important.
Thank you. I like the fact that you pointed out that just any number. It doesn't have to be 1,000 words. People can start from 200 words and make their way up as they go. But just choose something 200, 400, 500 words, but make it a habit to sit down and do some writing every day if you want to be a writer. Yeah, that's a very good habit to cultivate. And it takes a lot because there's so many things you could be doing
Yeah.
other than writing. It takes a lot of discipline to be able to do that. So I really admire you, and I'm sure people will be inspired by your model, your discipline to writing your book. So did you know from the beginning that you wanted to publish, or did it happen step by step? Did you just wake up one morning and said, "Oh, I'm going to publish a book"?
Ooh, it's hard for me to remember exactly, but I do think there was definitely a part of me from the beginning that knew what publishing was and was like, I really want to do this. I think that was definitely always the goal. And yet, there were parts of me that were like, I don't want to publish this book. I just want to do this for me. At one point, I was like, why don't I just write this book and then I'll get a printed copy of it and I can pretend like I published a book, but I didn't actually publish a book. And inevitably, as I continued and the more I just committed to writing this story, the more I was like, okay, I need to publish this. I need to turn this something into I need to turn this into something that's real. I need to turn this into something that's more than just for me.
Thank you. So, for someone trying to get into writing like you did, um, because it sounds fun while you're talking about it, but there could be some surprises when someone actually jumps into it. What part of the publishing process surprised you the most when now I've written a book, now I want to publish? What surprised you?
Good question. I think marketing was probably the most surprising because I definitely, when I started, I mean, I was 12. So I had this idea that's like, oh, I'm going to throw my book on Amazon and it's going to get a bunch of sales. No. If you throw your book on Amazon and you don't tell anyone, you don't do anything, it's not going to get a single sale. And really, what I realized is marketing is this very intense, very long process that often starts months in advance. Because the other thing that I had no idea about until I started promoting my books was that the majority of the marketing process is actually done before the book releases. It's that crucial pre-marketing stage. I just published a new book a couple days ago, and I'm literally like almost all the really important stuff happened and was scheduled before the book's release.
Thank you. So, marketing too is one area that I struggle down to this day. We go, I would rather not talk to anybody about stuff, but publishing a book is one part of your life that you have to blow your trumpets. If you don't shout at the rooftop and tell everybody, you know what, I have a book, yeah, nobody is going to do that for you. So you have to be your own fan, scream it up at the rooftop and shout it out like, I have a book on Amazon for you to go and buy. So yes, I agree with you. Marketing is a very, very challenging part of book publishing. So, what advice would you give kids or teens who think publishing is too hard, it's only for adults? What advice will you give them?
I think I would definitely say, like, I know this is like the very silly advice to give, but it is so much scarier than it seems because really, the publishing is just like, you upload your book file and the book goes to Amazon or your distributor. But the really scary thing is actually just like sharing it with people and this idea that people can discover it. So the more comfortable you are with your own work, the easier that will be. So, for example, making sure that your book is at a stage where you feel ready to share it. So have you edited it multiple times? Have you read through it one final time? Are you sure that everything is okay? And the thing is sometimes the answer is always going to be no. And another thing is that you really also don't want to over edit your work. You don't want to have like 1,000 drafts, but you can sort of though there will be a point when you've read through your book so many times that you're only making minor changes or you're making changes for the sake of making changes. If you can acknowledge that you're really not actually improving the story, you're just changing it, then that's the point where you're ready. If you're like, for example, like reading through and you're making a change, but maybe this isn't for the best. It's not, these are no longer significant changes, but like little things that might not even be the right thing. So just like seeing when you're at a point where the book really cannot be improved. It can just be like morphed into something else.
So this is a very important point you brought out because kids and teens also suffer from what is called imposter syndrome, from self-doubt. So sometimes you've done the work, are too scared to show it to someone else because you think it's not good enough. So you keep changing and tweaking things here and there until there's nothing else to tweak. And then when there is not, you think there's nothing else to tweak, you just hide the book. I'm not going to show it to anybody else. So if you put in the work to write a book, share it with the rest of us. Let's see it. And the more you share it with people, the better you become because it allows them to have feedback. And feedback is what moves us up. When people give you feedback, you're like, okay, that's where I got it wrong the first time. I can improve next time.
Yeah,
So, yes. So, do you write every day? You've said that before. So, but let me get it again. Do you write every day?
I do.
Okay. And what helps you keep going when you don't feel inspired? Because there are some days you wouldn't feel like doing it. So, what keeps you going?
So I usually, one of my biggest tips for motivation is that I set sort of goals for just scenes I'm really excited to write. I like basically will plot out a couple scenes in advance, and I'm not really a plotter, but I'll plan out maybe like I want this to happen in chapter 20, but I have to write everything in between to get to that point. But sometimes, though, I'll admit, like, when I'm feeling really unmotivated, when I'm like, I don't know what these characters are doing, I don't know what's happening, occasionally I'll skip to like a couple paragraphs ahead and just write that because I know that in order to complete this book, I need to fill in the middle. So, on one hand, like, I do try to force myself to get through, but then other times I will like occasionally skip ahead. But I'm not a crazy out of order writer where I'm writing like in a whole different chapter later. I can't really do that. But I mean, if that works for you,
Thank you.
go right ahead. Um, on the other hand, sometimes it's just writing nonsense. Like, I have occasionally written portions where I'm like, I like to like leave notes for myself of like what I want to happen, and sometimes these are like multiple paragraphs of just like random things that like are going to happen in the next chapter, and then it's up to me the next time I sit down and write to actually organize through this and turn this from just a very incoherent multiple paragraph idea to a chapter.
So, how do you come up with your ideas then?
Um, my ideas really come from everywhere. I'll have a dream and then I'll wake up the next morning and I'll write it down in my notes app. Occasionally, I'll just be like thinking about anything about my life, about this TV show I just watched, about something I've seen. And then all of a sudden, I'll be like, wait a second, like, I think this could be a really interesting book. And I'll write it down. Sometimes I'll just write down just anything I find interesting. And I have this whole like ideas tab in my notes app that's just super like messy. But this is really how I start to like develop books. Sometimes these are literally only one sentence, and then that one sentence turns into like my next like 500-page project. And sometimes it's like
Wow.
multiple paragraphs already with like a working title.
I love using my notepad too. I tell my notepad is a walking encyclopedia because that's where I put in everything, all my drafts, everything that I ever did. So, do you have a routine, a schedule that helps you keep up with all of this?
Yes and no. I It's definitely evolved over the years. Early on, back when I was still predominantly at home due to lockdown, it would be where I basically wake up, eat breakfast, and then by 11 p.m. sit down and just do not 11 p.m. 11 a.m. I'd sit down and do my writing. But now it really depends on the day. Over the on the week during the weekends, I it's usually wake up, get breakfast, and go work. And typically, I go and I work in different like coffee shops and cafes because that's where I find I'm really inspired, and also I just really like drinking coffee.
Yeah.
That said, the exact times truly depend. I'd say I'm up pretty early right now, just because it's winter break and I've been sleeping in. So I'll probably start working around 12:30 to 1, depending on how soon I get breakfast. That said, I have times where I don't start working until 3 or 4 because that's how late I slept. Or occasionally I'll have to write in the evening because I'll have something. And when I'm at school, usually I try to write a little bit during the school day. And if not, it's right after school at 3 p.m. I go have a snack and I go work until I'm done with all of my writing and all of my homework.
Wow. You have a very packed schedule. So, what would you say to a student who feels before that when life gets so busy, how do you decide what to do first?
So sometimes it's actually prioritizing other things over my writing on days where I'm like super busy and everything is so stressful and I only have a certain amount of time. I'll usually try to do my homework first because I know I'm going to complete my writing. Whether it means I'm going to be up until 1 in the morning, I'm going to find a way to complete it. I'm pretty good with writing under pressure. I've had times where it's taken me like several hours just to do my 1,000 words, and I have times where I've done it in 30 minutes because I just do not have the time. And so knowing that like I can do this, I have completed my writing in crazy places under crazy conditions. I should do my homework first because I don't know if I'm going to complete that otherwise. Because there's a chance after my writing, I'm going to be like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. But then, will I? And I know I'm going to write the next day. I know I'm going to write today, but I don't necessarily know like if I'm going to do my homework. So I should just do it first.
Do you kind of lower the bar on days like that? For instance, you said earlier on that you aim to write 1,000 words a day. So, but when life gets so busy, you have other things, you have school assignments and everything to do, like, and then maybe work. Do you lower the bar on such days so that at least you could tick that I wrote something today, even if it wasn't 1,000 words?
I don't.
You
I
don't.
haven't
That's good. I mean, everyone has a
yeah.
different schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't written below 1,000 words, I think in maybe 3 years.
Wow. Wow.
It's
That's amazing.
it's very chaotic. I mean, it definitely can get stressful, but also the more you do it, just the easier it is.
Okay. So, how would you, what would you say to a student who feels they don't have time for their passion? Whether it be
So
in writing or anything else, and they don't have time, but they want to do it, but they don't have time. So, what would you say?
I think it's like there's definitely a lot of the time there's this like illusion that we don't have time to do things, and that's absolutely true. Like there are definitely like everyone is busy in their own way. There is a good chance that you can find just like a tiny moment just to whether you're writing or whether you're creating art. Maybe it's keeping a physical notebook and like scribbling some, just poems or any ideas or scribbling a little bit of prose before you go to bed or when you're in the car and or when you're waiting for something, or if you're an artist it's doing that same thing but drawing, just like finding that little time, whether it's 5 minutes just to create something or get something down. And because then once you have more time, maybe it's a weekend or over the summer, you can really develop those ideas and really pursue this thing to this like greater extent.
Wow. Thank you very much. So, where can this audience find you, and what do they hope to get when they come to you? Yeah.
You can find me
Yeah.
anywhere you buy books online. You can my main retailer is Amazon, but you can also find my books on Barnes Noble, on Target, Waterstones. Your independent bookstore should have them online and you can order them. You can also find me on my Instagram, which is at Shanti Hershenson, and my TikTok is at Shanti Who Writes. And there are plenty of other places all across the internet. So if you look me up and if you feel like reaching out, I really enjoy making connections with people. I try to give advice to everyone who reaches out, although occasionally my DMs in my website can get very cluttered. And ultimately, like, I just really like connecting with readers and with people, and I like having conversations. I like sharing ideas. And so, yeah, feel free to reach out and maybe you'll read one of my books.
Thank you very much. So we'll put some of your links in this episode show notes so that this audience can find you. And thank you very much for coming to the show, Shanti.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a powerful and encouraging conversation with Shanti. I hope today's episode reminded you, especially our very young listeners, that creativity doesn't belong to a certain age group and that big dreams can grow even in small pockets of time. One thing that stood out to me from this conversation with Shanti is this: you don't have to choose between your responsibilities and your passion. You just have to learn how to manage your time with intention. Be clear on what you want, and you'll be able to find the time to do whatever your purpose or your passion is. Whether it's school, homework, family life, or writing, progress happens when we decide what matters and make room for it. If you are a young writer listening today or a parent supporting one, remember this: Your story matters, your voice matters, and consistency will take you further than perfection ever will. Thank you for tuning in to the Minute Mastery Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who could use more time in their day. And remember to subscribe, check out the links in this episode's show notes, and leave us a review. Until next time, you are in control of your time and you've got this.